What's going on, everybody? The real Sherif M here, aka ManganasSteel, and it is nice to be back home. If you caught my last video, you'll know that I haven't been really back home in nearly like 2 months, put a ton of miles on my car, been doing a lot of driving, a lot of footage, blah, 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 blah. But let's get to what this video is all about. This is part of the I Designed a Knife series, and I have a new one to show you guys. It is the Kubey Ruckus. I am very excited. This is the next one in my series of knives to come out. And man, did this thing turn out really nice, actually. I gotta give props to Kubey. They did an excellent job with this. And to give you a little bit of a background on this knife, basically what I wanted to do was to do an everyday, usable knife, but that was heavily inspired by tactical knives. And had a bit of the styling of tactical knives, but maybe not so beefy as like something that you would stake your life on. I have always been a big fan of the man, the myth, the legend, Bob Trezzola. And Bob is really one of the gods in the industry. And he really, this book taught me so much about like proper knife design and how to approach things like locking geometry, that I kind of wanted to do something that I felt he would appreciate, actually. So that was the idea behind the Ruckus, behind this guy. So there are some elements of the design actually that kind of relate directly to lessons from the book, actually, in terms of stop pin location, lock geometry, and all of this stuff. So for being an EDC knife, it's actually fairly tough, believe it or not, because I followed Bob's principles. There are other elements that I'll get to, like this little curvature right here that again are part of like tactical knife thinking, but the reason why it's called the Ruckus is when I started designing this and I saw that the thumb ramp kind of melded beautifully with this curvature here to give you a little bit more like fine edge control. It reminded me of a mohawk and a little bit of like punk rock stuff. And I believe it or not, I used to be really heavily into punk rock. The first hairstyle that I ever really dug was a mohawk. A little bit of a backstory: when I was a kid in like kindergarten, actually, there was a dude who was at my school. He was much older than me, but he was walking around with this giant mohawk. I mean, I'm talking like easily like a foot of hair off of his head, and he wore it like die hard every single day. And as like a kindergartner, I was so enamored with it. I thought it was so badass. And this is a little bit of a tribute, I feel, to it. The back spacer, for example, has this like studded approach that it just kind of reminded me of like the belts that punk rockers used to wear and stuff like that. And so the idea of this knife is bring on the ruckus, that's the idea of it. So anyways, let me swap the camera around, show you the different versions, give you a little bit of a breakdown of some of the design thinking, and I hope you enjoy. I hope you pick one up too. So here we go. Here are all of the different models. And yes, there are 7 of them, if you can believe that. Let's kind of run through them real quick. You have copper and green G10 looking pretty sick right here. You've got titanium and black G10. Blue happens to be one of my favorite colors, and this happens to be one of my absolute favorite versions. You have the translucent G10 or the raw G10 here with black hardware and black blade. This one I wasn't so sure I would like, but man, I'm actually really excited to see people pick this one up. It's really fun. This is the vulnerable like Stormtrooper edition. I would love to see some people pick this one up and actually dye the scales. That one I'm really excited for. You have the traditional black and stainless version right here. You have the green G10 with the black blade, which very, very tactical looking, very like, you know, workout in the field version. And one of my other favorites, the micarta edition. So to kind of give you guys a general idea, the overall length is almost exactly the same as the GRAZIOSO. It is a little bit thicker in some regards. The blade is a little bit taller, as you can see, versus the GRAZIOSO. The thickness right here for your index finger and so forth is literally almost exactly the same as the GRAZIOSO, but it does get a bit thicker out here towards the end to provide you with a little bit more meat in the back of the hand. It does have this sort of saber ground blade, as you can see, with a nice thin bevel, actually, primary. If you look, it's, what is this in freedom units thickness? I know it in metric. I do most of my design stuff in metric. So if you know metric, it's 3.09 millimeters. In inches, it's 0.12, okay? The handle thickness, regardless of the model, comes in at 0.51, or if you follow metric, right at about 13 millimeters. So it has really nice everyday carry proportions, makes it very comfortable in the hand. It features a very deep pocket carry clip, so this thing really does not present whatsoever over the top of your pocket. If you're putting it in, let's see if I can get it to go over my little hitch and timber pouch here. So, this is a bit thicker than I expected. Yes, I'm going to leave this in because struggling on camera is always funny. But there you go. So really, nothing shows over the top of your pocket whatsoever, but it is very easy to pull out. Let's see, what else can I tell you about it? Now, the weights between each of these does vary a bit. If you own a premium GRAZIOSO, then like this guy in the shredded carbon fiber and titanium, you are aware this guy weighs in right at about 3.37 ounces. The micarta version here of the Ruckus comes in at 3.7. So if you like the lightweightness of the premium, the micarta is very close. If you're used to the brass and micarta edition, that's closer to 4.6 ounces. Now, the G10 version of these, of the Ruckus, comes in at 4 ounces. So it's a bit lighter than the GRAZIOSO with the brass and micarta. The titanium in G10 comes in at 4.26 ounces. So just a little bit heavier than the full G10. And the copper, the heaviest of the bunch, comes in at 4.8. So not bad, actually, considering it's a bit of a beefier knife than the regular, the more budget version of the Grazioso. Its weight is proportional. Just in case you guys hadn't seen, this is a special limited edition of the Grazioso Aquaman edition. M390 blade and all of this crazy texturing. I haven't gotten to show this off yet, but I was sent this by KIZER. Super cool. Anyways, so this is the copper and G10. Very nice. This is going to take a nice patina over time. I'm very excited to include this in my rotation, but I gotta say my favorite, probably my two favorites, are the titanium and G10 and the micarta. This one for ultralight, like everyday carry, and the titanium and G10 for more dressy carry. This thing just, I don't know, screams class to me. One thing that you're going to notice that is a bit different between the two is this portion right here across the backspace, across the stop pin. With the bolstered version, you do have an additional screw that goes through to help secure the bolster, and it secures the bolster through the stop pin, versus the standard like micarta and G10 editions just use a sandwich stop pin as is typical. Now, I mentioned that this took some of the lessons that I learned from Bob Trezzola, so let me tell you a little bit about that. This is about a 5mm stop pin. This is a really, really serious stop pin. And that comes in at 0.19, almost, 0.195 inches. And the reason for that is I really wanted something that when you use the lock, it gave you an incredibly secure feeling. I feel a lot of knives really err on the side of a smaller stop pin, and even though we are using knives for everyday carry tasks, this is not something that was necessarily designed to do the hardest work in the world. It still behooves us as knife designers to integrate a beefy stop pin, because there's nothing worse than getting the feeling that your knife doesn't lock up well. And in keeping with that, the lock geometry between this point, the stop pin, and the edge of the lock bar right here where it interfaces with the blade creates a very strong triangulation. And that's where the sort of the tactical knife thinking comes into play. Other considerations that I took into the design were putting a fair bit of jimping here, but incredibly comfortable. This is not going to cut into your thumb, but it provides just the right amount of traction that your thumb isn't going to slip easily. If you do apply a bit of pressure, it gives you just nice feedback and really locks your thumb into place. So if you do have to do some piercing in order to penetrate some media, your thumb is not going to be doing one of these. And that's very important to me. I tend to do a fair bit of piercing with my knives, and this is just the perfect ramp curve and the perfect amount of jimping with that curvature. Other considerations were this little upsweep here to meet the ramp, and this will allow you to have a little bit more fine control without having to put your fingers all the way to the edge of the blade. So if you really need to keep a little far away but still maintain fine tip control, this little ramp allows you to do that, and you can use it both with an index finger or you can do it with your thumb if you need to do slow but precise, like full grip cutting. And this is where the lock geometry and the stop pin come to play. You're really leveraging hard on the blade in this kind of grip. And having a beefier setup here really pays dividends. Aside from that, I have my usual sort of ergonomic contouring that I'm trying to be known for. That really gives you this feeling that the knife just settles beautifully into the hand. As you can see, it's no more knife and no less knife than I need to fit my hand. It just disappears perfectly. The butt of the knife just coming to the edge here. It's equally comfortable in this reverse strap cutting grip, in the ice pick grip, even the reverse ice pick grip, as you can see, all of which, sorry for the bump there, all of which are very comfortable, easy to access, and you can even, with this, sharpening choil and the flat edge here, just get up and do push cutting, and you have just enough clearance that you can really use the full edge of the blade to get in and do work. I really take pride in making my tools useful and making them very comfortable. This is part of why I didn't make this a flipper right here. Since when you make a knife a flipper like the GRAZIOSO, you do need to increase the size of this choil right here in order to get that grip, which kind of takes away from your cutting edge that's available. And since I really wanted to make this a kind of like do-all practical tactical knife, that's why I didn't make that right there flipper, because if you had a big flipper protrusion here, this grip would be infinitely less comfortable and you wouldn't be able to push through media as easily. Hence why I did thumb studs. Now, I've seen some reviewers talk about this little extension right here and say, oh yeah, he made it a front flipper. I gotta be honest, I can't take credit for something that I didn't think of. Well, okay, I did think about it, I did consider it, but it wasn't by design, okay? Let me explain what my hemming and hawing really translates to. For a tactical knife that has a stop pin in the arrangement that I did, but also has these sort of swept edges, you will inevitably have a portion of the blade tang sticking out just like this. Let me show you an example. You can see that in the Emerson designed 0640 right here. Had he made this edge go straight down all the way, this portion would have been covered up, but he didn't do that. Just like me, he wanted to have a little bit more sex appeal to the lines. Now, what I did do a bit differently than Emerson did here was I've seen people modify the 0640 to put jimping all the way up to this edge to make front flipping a bit easier. So when I did see that, I said, you know what? If I am going to have this, I will extend the jimping the whole way. So you can do it, but this was honestly not designed as a front flipper. It is not an accident that it works well that way, but it wasn't intended to be that way. I like front flippers. They're not my favorite, if I'm honest. I really like a good thumb stud. Actually, I'm a real big sucker for a nice thumb disc, personally. I don't know. I just kind of dig them. But a lot of people in the market don't really care for them. They say it gets into the cutting path a little too much, which I get. I'm not going to argue that point with them. But yeah, I designed this to be primarily a thumb stud knife with a nice snappy action. You can reverse flick it. You can, well, if I don't fail it, you can thumb flick it, or you can slow roll it any way you want. Now, this may be, I can't remember, I don't have a momentum next to me, but this may be one of my first knives that is fully reversible. So, you lefties out there, you are not left out in the cold with the Ruckus, okay? It is drilled for both right and left hand carry, and I hope that makes this appeal to more people. So, that's about it. I do want to give a quick shout out to Misheard Knife Reviews. He did send me this dope challenge coin, do or do not, there is no try. Famous saying from Star Wars, and I am a big fan of the Mandalorian series, so this felt very apropos. And shout out to Awesome Hanks. I picked up one of these coin pouches right here from him, and he included a couple of these really, really sick little patches. You got an avocado with an AR, and you got a burger with a bat. I just think these are so cute and cool, man. I absolutely love them, and huge fan of both this little, coin pouch and this do or do not coin, man. They are sick. So I hope you guys like this look at the knife. I'm trying to think, did I forget anything? Oh, you know what? I'm a dumbass. I'm trying to wrap things up here without talking about one last element of the blade, right? One of the reasons that I went with the saber grind is that it gives you a very late tip taper. If you can see here, I don't know how well that's going to show up on the camera. I do hope it shows well. And so since I am a person who does do, a bit of piercing in media with a thinner blade stock like this, the advantage of that saber grind does allow me to have the tip stay fairly thick and fairly robust for a blade of this thickness, versus say something like the GRAZIOSO, which does taper quite a bit earlier, all the way from back here to the tip, which gives you very nice fine control. So I wanted to have a little bit of a difference in the kind of knives that I offer and the kind of styles. So this really suits this sort of more robust style in terms of the grip, the blade grind, everything, the ramp. It has the character of, again, an everyday tactical, whereas this being much more of a fine gentleman's knife is more for precision, almost X-Acto-like cutting at the tip and nice and slicey character. So there you go, guys. Here is the new Ruckus and the premium GRAZIOSO. If you guys like my knife, please let me know down in the comments. I know a lot of you guys have been leaving comments about both the Momentum and the GRAZIOSO. I read all of your comments. I appreciate them. It really motivates me to keep going. And please make sure you like, comment, subscribe the video, hop on my Instagram, give me a follow, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.